Would you believe me if I told you there was a way to run your Pecos and keep your temperature fluctuation less than 20 degrees? Would you believe me if I told you that you can actually run your Pecos without running outside every 15 minutes to check on your vents or your fire? Well, friends, seeing is believing. So today, I'm not just telling you how to tame the Pecos, I'm going to show you using my Chefstemp S1 and the Breezo fan. I'm going to share graphs. We're going to walk through a cook today. I'll be smoking some pork belly. I'm going to show you everything from A to Z, how you can tame your Pecos also. I'm Matt, this is Peppercoat Barbecue, and welcome to the Peppercoat Deck. As you can see, my Pecos has been heavily modified already, and I'll put a link in the description or maybe right over here where you can see the modification video for the Pecos. And I'm going to tell you, this may be the best mod. In fact, this is the best mod to date that I have done on the Pecos, adding the S1 and the Breezo fan. So this is going to be a two-part series. This is part one. We're going to talk about the modification and burning splits in the Pecos, because I know that's typically what we do with the Pecos. It is an offset. But in part number two, which will be coming out next week, if it's already out, I'll link it at the end. But we're going to be talking about how to turn your Pecos into an overnight or somewhat close to an overnight smoker using the S1 and the Breezo. And trust me, you are not going to want to miss that. So let's talk a little bit about the modification. Now, if you're not familiar with the S1 and the Breezo fan, I do have a full review on my channel. I'll link that up here. Also, I'll try to link that at the end. And I would recommend that you watch that before you decide to make this modification, but I have found it to be one of the most useful barbecue tools that I have ever had. And I had thought about modifying my Pecos for quite a while, but I was afraid to drill the hole in the firebox. I didn't want to ruin my smoker. But then I saw the drill sergeant. He took the cheapest offset smoker that he could find, and he modified his with the S1 and the Breezo, and he made his El Cheapo smoker work using the Breezo. So I decided to go ahead and commit. So Drill Sergeant, if this hadn't worked, I was coming for you. So I decided to drill the hole over here. Originally, I thought it would be best here in the center, but this piece of metal here on this pinwheel is very thin. In some testing, it got about 200 degrees hotter than this piece of metal over here. And also, I couldn't patch that hole with a bolt and washers, and this still worked. I didn't want to render this useless. Plus, if I would have mounted the Breezo fan here anywhere on the door when you're opening and closing the door, you know, it could have come unplugged. I tried a couple of formations previously. I tried burning the fire directly on the fire brick in the center, but it just didn't seem to get enough air. Then I tried just using the charcoal grate that came with the Pecos. Then I tried using that charcoal grate with a little bit of an angle on it, so the fire would kind of nestle down here near where the air was blowing in on this front side. That worked pretty good, but there was nowhere for the ash to go. The fire would kind of smolder a little bit when it got buried in ash. And the fan was also blowing ash into the smoke chamber, which I didn't really like. So this was the final setup that I came up with, and I have the original charcoal grate sitting in here in this V-shape formation, and then I have a grill rack from an old grill in here. This allows air underneath, and it also allows a place for the ash to fall to. It kind of traps it in there so it's not blowing it up through the smoke chamber. The Breezo comes with two metal plates that you can use on Kamado style smokers. I'm using the smallest one just as a heat shield. This is also what I used when I decided where I wanted to mark my hole, and that way I got the size hole that I needed and got it where I needed it. But to put this in there, it's got some springs, and so I'm just going to put the top two in, stick the bottom one in, and there you go. It just pops right into place. So I've put a little bit of a lump charcoal in here, not too much, and I've laid one pecan split on top of that lump charcoal. Now I'm just going to take my lighter. I'm going to light a tumbleweed here underneath that lump charcoal. And while that is getting lit up, we're going to set up for the cook. Once you get that fire started, you can go ahead and close this top door of your smoker. You can see that I do have the fan fired up. You can probably see the flames coming up already. So I'm closing this top door of the smoker. On my side door, the firebox door, I'm leaving my vent all of the way open for now. Once that temperature reaches our target temp of 250, we will close that down and let the Breezo do the work. But right now, I want to let this breathe. I want as much oxygen in there as I can. So once the fire was started, I got into the app and I set up my S1 and my Breezo fan. I went in here, set the target temperature for 250 on the Breezo, turned the fan on, and you can see that it is now running. And then also something that's very important when you are using the S1 and the Breezo for this process is that you set up some target temperatures or high and low range temperatures in the app. You can see that I have it set up for 265 as a high temp, but the 245, the minimum temp, is very important. And I found that once this thing, when it drops 248, that fan cuts back on and it spikes it back up. And if it drops to 245, that is because you are running out of splits. Your BTUs are gone and you need to add another split. It's very important that you have that minimum temperature alarm set. That way you know when you need to come out and tend to the smoker. It's been 32 minutes since we lit the fire. We just hit 250 degrees. So I'm gonna go ahead and close my vent all the way down over here. The fan has cycled off. As that drops back below 250, then it'll start cycling to keep that air, enough air in there to keep it at 250 degrees. And sometimes when you close the vent, you may start to get a little bit of dirty smoke, depending on how much hotter it goes. This is why I only put a small amount of charcoal and one split in there to start it, because the more you have in there, when you close that all the way, it's going to suffocate that fire and it's going to cause it to smolder and burn a dirty smoke. So you want to use a small amount of wood and let this give it just the right amount of air. You can see there it just cycled back on. So we didn't wind up with dirty smoke. It's looking good. It's nice and clean. I'm going to go ahead and get our pork belly on. So just got my first alarm. We've dropped below that 245 degree mark. It's only been probably 10 or 12 minutes since we put the pork belly on and peeked at this. One thing I've found that it is helpful at this point is if you do pause your fan. And so you do that by just using your on-off button. It also works as a pause button. And the reason that I like to pause the fan when doing this is it prevents it from flaming up. And what I have experienced is if you don't pause that fan, as soon as you put this next split on top here that's already been heating up inside your firebox, it will immediately ignite. It throws out a lot of really huge flames and it spikes your temperature. And you can see how quickly that lit. I'm just going to close this down. I'll hit my button here to unpause the fan. It should kick back on, start running, and bring us right back up to 250 degrees pretty quickly. It has been 46 minutes since we put the last split on the fire. Now we're below 245. So we're going to go ahead and add our next split, and I'm also going to spritz the pork belly. I did hit the pause button on the fan. I'm going to go ahead and grab this split. Look how charred this thing is. It is ready to burn. I'll mix up my coals just a little bit. I'm going to lay the split right on top of them. Put the next one up here so it can be heating up. And look at this. That one's already catching. Pork belly's looking really good. Go ahead and give it a spritz. You can see that fat cap starting to render out, split open a little bit. Both of them are up to 108 and 106 internal temperature, and I am also using the Chefstemp probe in here that comes with the S1. So we're gonna let those keep going for a little bit, and I'm just going to turn the fan back on. Just hit that pause button. At this point, you know the drill. It's the same process. I get an alarm at 245. I'd go out, add a split, and I was going through a split about every 35 to 45 minutes on the average, depending on what size the split was. After another couple hours, I pulled the pork belly off, wrapped it, and at this point I was going to bump my temperature up So I did turn my fan up to 300 degrees and I reset my high and low alerts. So now at 295, I would get that low alarm and know that I needed to add another split. I don't know if you can see this or not, but this is setting on 297 degrees. And the amount of time that it took me to wrap these pork bellies, like 5 or 6 minutes, I was able to go from that 250 up to 300. I'm ready to throw these back on. I am gonna pause that fan while I open this up because I don't want it jumping up to 400. I want to put my fat end back towards the firebox. And we're gonna let them go to around 203. Same process as before. Now my alarm was going off at 295. I would come back out, add a split, but I did notice that now I'm having to add splits about every 20 to 30 minutes running at this higher temperature. The pork belly's been on for about 5 hours total now, 3 unwrapped, 2 wrapped. One of them's temping out at 203. I'm gonna go ahead and pull that one off. The other one's around 192, needs a few more minutes to finish up. Our pit has been running for close to 6 hours total now. So I'm going to go ahead and get some pictures of the graph, stop recording the cook at this point, and then we'll just take a few minutes to walk through this graph. So taking a look at our graph here now, we can see that we came up to temp really quickly, getting up to that 250. And just remember to close down not only the vent door on the firebox, but to shut that stack down about halfway. I forgot to do that. And right over here in the very beginning, I shot past 250. It went up to around low 270s. Now, one thing that is nice about this S1, when you have those really quick peaks and then it comes back down, or if it drops down really low and goes back up, all of that's not seen on this graph because it kind of takes the average over that long cook. So I did have a couple of points. That was one where it went up to probably low 270s. Another one about right here near the end of the cook before we wrapped. It peaked up to around the mid 270s. You know, not sure what just happened. It just got hot, but it came back down really quickly. And you can see that we're nice and level across here. And I guarantee you, if I was to take this graph and compare this to a graph using the Pecos without the S1 and the Breezo, this looks much, much nicer. Over here, you can see where we shot up to 300 degrees very quickly. If you'll notice the big peaks over here, this is because after I had the pork belly wrapped, I stopped pausing the fan when I would put in the next split, and you can see that that did cause quite a bit of fluctuation and a spike. But overall, just looking at this, I am very pleased with the way that the S1 and the Breezo works with the Pecos burning splits. We just finished our pork belly tacos, and I wanted to give a couple of closing thoughts about this modification. I do believe this is the best modification I have done so far to the Pecos as far as lessening the amount of babysitting that needs to be done. Other than adding a split, putting on the pork belly, spritzing, or something that you would have to be in front of the smoker for anyway, I was only out here 2 extra times over that 6 hour period. Now, how many of you that have a Pecos can say that now? Yeah. Does this modification work? Yes. Should you purchase this and mod your Pecos? Well, you got to make that decision. I'm not going to tell anybody to drill a hole in their $500 smoker. You decide if it's right for you or not. For me, it's a no-brainer. I can use the S1 and the Breezo on this smoker. I use the S1 on my G3. I use the S1 and the Breezo on my Oklahoma Joe's Bronco. So I get multiple use out of it. So for me, it really works. Now, if you're only burning splits, that's one thing. Yes, it helps. But if you are interested in taking your Pecos to the next level and making your Pecos into an overnight cooker and still being able to go to bed and get some sleep, then you're definitely going to want to watch the video next week. I'll post that right here if it's already posted. If not, it's coming in a few days. If you'd like more about the modifications I've done to the Pecos so far, you can check out this video. And if you would like more information on the S1, then you can check out this video right over here. Looks like you got a lot to watch, so I'll see you in a few minutes.